With Iliac's assurance, Kong Ming'an no longer hesitated. He walked slowly to the front of the beast ceiling platform, his expression calm as he faced his elder. Seeing this, Kong Deming fell silent. With a press of spirit power from his palm, he struck the platform and quickly undid several of its core seals. The silver-white pillar split open with a buzz, revealing the spirit beast within, bound by countless chains of light and deep in slumber. It was a dragon-type spirit beast, about 3 meters long, covered in dark spikes and dark silver, diamond-shaped scales. Its body was lithe and graceful, its tail made of bony segments like thorny barbs. Perhaps because it had only just reached the threshold of a 10,000-year spirit beast when it was captured and hadn't yet fully adjusted to its power, faint spatial ripples seemed to emanate from its body. A cold, gleaming spirit dagger appeared silently in Kong Ming'an's hand. With a flick of his wrist, it became a precise streak of light and pierced the thorny dragon's vital point. There was no roar, no struggle. The thoroughly sealed beast was already helpless. It twitched instinctively, then its life force drained away. After a second or two, a spirit ring haloed in deep black slowly rose from its corpse, 10,000-year quality. Kong Ming'an did not hesitate. He sat cross-legged, threads of spirit power unfurling from his body to bind and envelop the black ring, then gradually drew it toward himself. As the ring entered his body, a vast torrent of energy surged through him. His tempered meridians and physical body trembled. His chi and blood churned like boiling magma, strengthening his form and holding the force in check. His spirit power took control, channeling the violent energy into his dantian for transformation and absorption. At the same time, the eye of life on Kong Ming'an's forehead quietly opened. A gray phantom, visible only to him, emerged and turned its gaze on the spirit ring, the soul level. Inside the ring, the thorny dragon's soul reacted. Its silver, vertical pupils filled with ferocity and venomous hatred at its death, and it began to gather its remaining strength, preparing to unleash a potent soul shock. Before it could act, a vast, pure gray light rose. Iliax had moved. The thorny dragon felt the threat and braced, but a hand of gray light seized its soul. Without a sound, the dragon's soul was pulled from the ring and taken by Iliax. Even a 10,000-year soul was preserved. Iliax collected it as usable material, then used his purifying power to cleanse the few lingering soul fragments on the ring before returning to the Eye of Life. The whole action was over in an instant. Only Kong Deming, whose cultivation reached level 98, sensed that something had happened, though he did not know what and chose to trust his grandson. The soul shock that could have been dangerous for many spirit kings was avoided. The absorption continued smoothly, and Kong Ming'an's aura gradually stabilized as he drew the remaining energy in. Kong Deming stood with his hands behind his back, his expression easing. The Hongqian siblings by his side sighed with relief, but remained on guard, watching the dark light around the ring. The absorption took a full 3 hours. Because the ring was unusual, the space around Kong Ming'an occasionally distorted and folded. At times, 1 or 2 hair-thin, pitch-black cracks flashed and vanished. At last, when the last trace of energy had been absorbed, the deep black spirit ring faded away. Kong Ming'an opened his eyes. In the depths of his ink-black pupils, countless tiny silver spatial lights winked in and out, giving them a deeper, more inscrutable quality. Ignoring the stares around him, Kong Ming'an raised his hand. A black spirit ring slowly formed in his palm and settled onto his wrist. His first 10,000-year ring, breaking the iron rule of the Douluo world that a first ring could only be a 100-year one. He glanced at the ring. Its light restrained, but unlike ordinary rings, it gave off a heart-stirring sense of vast power and mysterious spatial fluctuations. Silver patterns with a spatial aura ran faintly across its surface. A small smile touched Kong Ming'an's lips. Xiao Hongqian fell silent, eyes bright with envy as he stared at the genuine 10,000-year ring on someone's wrist. Although he usually thought Kong Ming'an a scoundrel, he had to admit the ring was amazing. He was already thinking how to get someone to teach him the trick. Kong Deming did not step forward, but watched his grandson with satisfaction. Meng Hongqian, ever lively, couldn't help blurting out first. Her ice-blue eyes shone with surprise and curiosity. "You succeeded? What are your spirit abilities? Are they powerful space abilities?" Kong Ming'an didn't answer right away. He frowned slightly, a rare, thoughtful expression, then lowered his eyes to the ring, as if feeling and sorting through something. After a moment, he traced the ring with a fingertip. Invisible spatial ripples spread outward, but what emerged seemed to be more than just space-based power. After a long pause, he finally raised his head and faced the expectant group. His voice carried a hint of uncertain doubt as he said slowly, "My spirit abilities seem to be rather numerous. Let me organize them first before I explain." The laboratory, quiet moments before, turned awkward. Xiao Hongqian clutched his head as if his brain were starting to hurt. "What do you mean? Rather numerous?" Kong Ming'an spread his hands, as helpless as he felt. "Just what I said. From what I can sense now, there are probably dozens of spirit abilities." Silence fell over the room. Chapter 22, Soul Ring Trinity Theory. Kong Ming'an did not answer at once. He lowered his gaze and examined the spirit ring in his hand. Over the past year, while he had concentrated on cultivation, Iliex had never stopped his research into spirit rings. Dozens of soft-boned rabbits had been sacrificed every day in that study, and a few months ago, Iliex had finally reached a preliminary understanding of their true nature. After a moment of thought, Kong Ming'an looked up at the Hongqian siblings and his elder, then spoke in a calm, measured voice. "A spirit ring originates from a spirit beast. If you completely dissect and separate a spirit beast, its makeup can be broadly divided into 4 parts: its body, its soul, its mental force or memory, and the most fundamental element, its spirit power. After a spirit beast is killed, its body remains where it fell. The spirit ring that forms from its death is composed of the remaining soul, its memories, and spirit power." He paused, then offered a more vivid comparison. "Think of a spirit ring as a semi-automatic, soul-guided rifle I built when I had time to tinker. The spirit power that forms the ring's base is like the rifle's casing. Its job is to carry the internal structure, namely the memory and the soul. The spirit beast's memories, especially those tied to the use of its abilities, become soul skill modules, components much like a firing pin, gas system, and recoil spring inside a gun. The remnant soul is the trigger mechanism that activates those modules, and the final bullet is the spirit power the spirit master injects." He paused and then summarized. "So when a spirit master uses a spirit ability, what happens is this. The spirit master injects spirit power into the ring. That input triggers the remnant soul. The soul, in turn, drives a specific soul skill module, and that module releases the spirit ability. That, in essence, is how spirit rings and spirit abilities function. This idea," he added, "we can tentatively call the spirit ring tripartite theory." Xiao Hongqian felt his head tingle, as if some new faculty of thought were starting to grow. Meng Hongqian blinked, half understanding and half confused. The argument seemed powerful, but she couldn't quite put her finger on why. Only Kong Deming's eyes shone with clear excitement, as if a new continent had been discovered. His gaze flickered with the thrill of new possibilities. Kong Ming'an continued without stopping. "Suppose a soft-boned rabbit had 3 spirit abilities in life: teleportation, paragon golden body, and charm. If an ordinary spirit master with no particular affinity kills it and absorbs its spirit ring, he will typically gain only one of those 3 abilities. That doesn't mean the other 2 abilities vanish. They still exist as soul skill modules carried by the ring. The problem is that the remnant soul left behind after death is too incomplete and weak. It can only anchor and trigger one of the soul skill modules and solidify it. The other modules, mixed with vast amounts of the beast's irrelevant memories, lie dormant deep inside the ring. This explains several phenomena. For example, why 100,000-year spirit rings often have 2 spirit abilities, because a 100,000-year spirit beast's soul is strong enough that, even incomplete, it can anchor and trigger 2 modules. He didn't finish the thought aloud. This also explained why later on, a complete spirit soul could grant multiple rings and multiple abilities. The soul of a spirit soul is more whole, so it can control and trigger more skills. The Snow Empress's spirit soul in the original work was a case in point. Kong Deming had already followed Ming'an's line of thinking and raised a question. So if a spirit beast soul is complete enough, one spirit ring could in theory trigger multiple spirit abilities, he asked. Theoretically, yes, Kong Ming'an replied. but in practice, it's constrained by the carrying capacity of a spirit ring. He smiled and explained in simpler terms. Imagine a spirit ring's total capacity is 10 units. In a natural ring, the incomplete remnant soul itself might take up about 4 units. The spirit beast's tangled, useless memory fragments could take up another 3. That leaves only 3 units for all the soul skill modules combined. The single spirit ability that a spirit master commonly uses, solidified by the remnant soul, might only occupy a small fraction of that 3-unit capacity, maybe 10% or less. If the spirit beast's soul were more complete, it would demand a larger share of the ring's space. But the ring's total capacity is fixed, so a stronger soul will inevitably compress or discard memories and skill modules to maintain balance. In his thoughts, he continued, the spirit soul system follows the same pattern. A complete spirit soul likely consumes the vast majority of a ring's capacity, perhaps 90%, leaving only a sliver for abilities. It achieves multiple skills by occupying multiple spirit ring slots. This, he speculated, explained why absorbing spirit souls in Douluo 3 required such a high mental force rank. The pressure on a spirit master comes not only from the ring itself, but from the spirit soul, the spirit beast's soul contained within. In short, Kong Ming'an concluded with the calm tone of a researcher, in spirit rings born from naturally killing spirit beasts, most of the ring's capacity is clogged by remnant souls and useless memories, while the real treasure trove, the soul skill modules, lies buried. This is structural inefficiency and an extreme waste. In the case of the spirit ring I possess, before absorption, the beast's soul inside it was completely purified and erased. The advantage is that the space originally occupied by the remnant soul has been freed. I can try to use my own will to perceive, connect, and activate all the potential soul skill modules within the ring. If nothing goes wrong, this 10,000-year spirit ring should offer me at least a double-digit number of soul skill modules, with each module representing an independent spirit ability. In other words, a single ring can genuinely contain multiple spirit abilities. The drawback is that everything then requires manual operation. He summoned his own spirit ring as an example and continued slowly. With ordinary spirit rings, you only needed to inject spirit power, and the remnant soul would automatically handle the triggering, guidance, and release. It was completely idiot-proof. But now, taking myself as an example, if I want to use a spirit ability, I must first precisely locate the module for that ability. Then I must accurately control the amount, attribute, output mode, range, effect strength, and numerous other parameters of the spirit power I inject. Finally, I have to lock onto the target and release the effect. Any mistake at any of those steps can cause the ability to fail, to be drastically weakened, or even to backfire against me. For most spirit masters used to the idiot-proof operation of ordinary rings, mastering this is like learning to speak from scratch. It takes a great deal of time to study and become accustomed to. Chapter 23. Who is an evil soul master? After Kong Ming'an finished speaking, the laboratory fell silent again. What he had just explained was stark and clear. The risks and rewards of removing residual souls from spirit rings were extreme. Success could mean a single spirit ring possessing multiple spirit abilities, effectively a dimension reduction blow to the traditional limit of 9 spirit abilities. Failure could cripple a spirit ring, lose spirit abilities, and directly reduce a spirit master's combat power. This technique is still experimental, Kong Ming'an said candidly. The basic theory has many gaps. I'm not going to make this part of the research public yet. You can listen, but don't go trying it on a whim. He wasn't bluffing. The sample size was tiny, really only 2 real cases, himself and Iliex, and neither was a typical example. Kong Ming'an had extraordinary control over energy, able to end experiments at any moment to save himself and iterate. Iliex was even less ordinary, a residual soul of exceptional quality with vast experience and fine control over various energies. Failures were rare for both of them. Their successes were essentially anomalies and not proof of general applicability. Still, gamblers existed in any world. To many spirit masters, risking a spirit ring as a stake in hopes of gaining more spirit abilities was a tempting one-way bet. Some would try it. Ming'an, I think I can do it, Xiao Hongqian declared confidently. Kong Ming'an glanced at him and shook his head. No, you can't. Xiao Hongqian blinked. Why reject me like that? Am I so incapable? Xiao Hongqian flushed. Kong Ming'an, used to this kind of reaction, merely reached into his storage spirit tool ring and pulled out 10 special, circular, silver-white devices. These are soul catchers, he told his elder, holding them out. They can capture and extract residual souls from spirit rings less than 1,000 years old, then purify the ring. They can produce the same effect I achieved with my ring. Keep one for yourself and give the others to people you trust to use them. Make sure they record the whole process of comprehending the spirit ring and send that to me. Kong Deming understood immediately and stored the 10 soul catchers away. What Kong Ming'an planned was simple: collect more samples. Without actual results and evidence, any theory was just air. The 9-level soul engineers under his elder were ideal candidates. They all had strong control over spirit power and mental force, didn't place excessive value on spirit rings, and were essentially within his circle. There were few better choices for controlled experimentation. Kong Ming'an glanced at Xiao Hongqian, who still looked uncertain, and gave a reassuring smile. Don't rush, he said. Just cultivate step by step. If nothing unexpected happens, you'll probably benefit directly from the results. Really? Absolutely. A moment later, Kong Deming and the others left the laboratory and it fell quiet. Kong Ming'an rose and walked to a workbench. He tapped it and a section of the adjacent wall slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a dignified older man with a long white beard. If any wicked spirit master from the Holy Spirit cult had been present, they would have recognized him, the second elder of the Holy Spirit cult, the Alliance Master of the Sunset Water Alliance, Nonggong Wan, who had claimed he was going into secluded cultivation. Kong Ming'an tapped the space between his brows and opened the Eye of Life. A gray stream of light flowed into the old man's body. A moment later, Nonggong Wan slowly opened his eyes and stepped out, his movements stiff. Iliex, thank you, Kong Ming'an said, his voice slightly grateful. The quality of his first spirit ring owed a lot to Iliex's help. No need, Iliex, posing as Nonggong Wan, smiled and shook his head. Researching spirit rings helped me too. If it hadn't been for your methods, I wouldn't have thought to use this approach to temporarily possess a body. Iliex revealed his spirit rings. 9 gray rings, etched with complex magical circuits and radiating a sacred aura, manifested around him. His aura had already surpassed that of an ordinary titled Douluo, and he was holding back. No one could tell his true limit. This was one fruit of the past year's experiments. At first, after understanding the essence of spirit rings, they found that removing residual souls freed a ring's carrying capacity. Then Kong Ming'an had an idea. Could a spirit ring be thoroughly cleansed and turned into a vessel for a soul? Iliex affirmed the concept, and the theory expanded. If a spirit master's soul could be removed and their spirit rings cleansed, it might be possible to control that spirit master's body by borrowing the spirit rings. The theory existed. Practice began. 3 more wicked spirit masters, 1 spirit king, 1 spirit saint, and 1 spirit Douluo, were sacrificed, and the possession method was born. It was not the same as the possession techniques in certain past life novels. It was closer to a puppet method. They called it possession as a future aspiration. A method has to be tested, and Iliex would be the user. Ordinary spirit masters weren't suitable. At minimum, a titled Douluo was required as a temporary body. Kong Ming'an selected a target conveniently in Mingdu. As Alliance Master of the Sunset Water Alliance and second elder of the Holy Spirit cult, Nonggong Wan made an excellent candidate. Through a prepared sneak attack, Kong Ming'an, using his elder, a level 97 titled Douluo, defeated Nonggong Wan, a level 92 wicked spirit master, and handed him over. They extracted his soul, processed the body, and used it as Iliex's temporary vessel. Was this act cruel and inhumane? That question mattered little to them. What kind of beings were wicked spirit masters? In their view, wicked spirit masters were worth less than spirit beasts. Their only value lay in being consumed as resources. Using them was simply efficient. Chapter 24. The Wizard is the Master. A moment later, Iliex stepped aside, casually plucked a soft-bones rabbit, and went back to his day's experiments. Before he did, he handed a faintly glowing white spirit ring to Kong Ming'an. Inside it was a soul skill module capable of opening the undead demigod plane. Kong Ming'an looked at the ring and sighed softly. So much to do. I hope I can catch up with the plan. So far, his research into spirit ring self-editing and reconstruction was roughly halfway complete. The self-editing portion was basically finished. Eliex already knew how to condense specific soul skill modules into a spirit ring. Those 9 special gray rings were the fruit of that research. Kong Ming'an's own progress lagged a bit behind and would need time to catch up. He summarized the work into 4 points. First, master all the soul skill modules contained in a spirit ring until he could use each of them seamlessly. That was the absolute foundation. If he couldn't even do that, then this path probably wasn't for him, and he should become a body cultivator instead, a route that demanded less thought and more pure physical refinement. Second, after identifying all usable modules in a ring, strip away every other useless memory belonging to the spirit beast, so the ring's carrying capacity would be maximized. That would lay the groundwork for later self-editing. Third, once thoroughly familiar with the modules, attempt to construct soul skill modules independently, so he could use the corresponding spirit abilities without relying on a physical ring. If he could do that, the spirit ring would no longer be a bottleneck for a spirit master, and only then could ring utilization reach its true potential. Fourth, an extension of the third. If he could construct modules at will, he could remove all soul skill modules from a ring to free its full capacity, then populate it with modules of his own design, completing the spirit ring's self-editing. Some might ask, if you can use spirit abilities without a ring, why bother rebuilding modules into a ring? Wouldn't that be redundant? Kong Ming'an had an answer. How could it be redundant? Suppose a ring's capacity limit is 100, and a fireball module costs 1 unit. You could load 100 fireball modules into the ring. Constructing modules on the fly takes time. Using a ring is instant. 100 fireballs hurled at once, instant overwhelming force. And while 100 fireballs might sound trivial, imagine a module like Paragon Golden Body. If a ring contained 100 Paragon Golden Body modules, how big an error margin would that afford a Spirit Master? Modules are individual. Each has its own cooldown. With enough modules, you could maintain a continuous cycle. What about spirit power consumption? Whose spirit power could support that many abilities? That's where the spirit ring itself came in. A spirit ring is a massive energy storage device. Abilities drawn from modules consume the ring's stored energy, not the Spirit Master's own spirit power. The ring could be made to achieve a degree of self-sufficiency. This was the second path Kong Ming'an developed after the Body Cultivator. He named it Spell Cultivator. Compared to Body Cultivator, the threshold for Spell Cultivator is far higher, and there are countless methods. Tsk, a mage is still a mage, he murmured, smiling to himself. He quelled his wandering thoughts, stretched, sat on a nearby futon, summoned his spirit ring, put it on, and closed his eyes. He set a modest goal. Before coming out of seclusion, I will be able to use all the soul skill modules in my ring fluently and engrave the soul skill module that opens the undead demigod plane onto the ring. Meanwhile, in Mingdu, inside an ordinary restaurant, 2 figures sat by the window on the 2nd floor, watching the bustling street below as they ate. They were Deming and Erming, sent by a certain god king to kill a certain person. Big brother, that brat sent another letter. Erming tossed a letter onto the table with a sneer. It demanded they deal with their target quickly and threatened to turn hostile if they didn't hurry. Deming's expression remained calm. Watch your words, he said evenly. He is a god king, after all. Erming sulked. God king? What kind of god king is he? He's been pushing us for 3 months, sending us to our deaths while he sits comfortably back there. Deming merely shook his head. We are spirit beasts, but our essences have reached the level of gods. According to the rules of the god realm, he can kill us whenever he wants, and no one will stop him. To him, we are ants. Erming fell silent and sullenly continued drinking. Daming sighed, then asked, Have you found Kong Ming'an's location? No, Erming replied. His whereabouts seemed deliberately concealed. There were rumors he was at the Sun Moon Army camp, but every inquiry came up empty. Is that so? Then we've done all we can. If we can't find him, there's nothing more to do. Deming breathed a small sigh of relief. Tang San could legitimately kill them at any time. Without constant surveillance by his divine sense over the Douluo plain, they had room to maneuver. Over the past year and a half, they had managed to stall. As long as the target didn't appear before them, and Tang San didn't force them to act immediately, they could keep delaying. He had a strong intuition. If they kept stalling, they might survive a while longer. Perhaps until the God King's patience finally ran out. But if they struck directly now, the outcome would almost certainly be disastrous. It was better to let things play out naturally. As the body tempering method slowly spread through the Sun Moon Empire's army and produced ever more impressive results, Kong Ming'an's reputation among the Empire's elite swelled to an almost ridiculous degree. This time, his renown didn't come from being the sole heir of the Kong family. It grew from a confluence of influence. The imperial family, the nobility, and the military all elevated him. There was no other explanation. What he brought to the table was simply irresistible. Beyond the army reforms the body tempering method enabled, the ring tempering method, then limited to only a few level 9 soul engineers in the Hall of Worship, had propelled the Empire's foremost pillar to level 98 cultivation in only a few short years. In effect, he had single-handedly tightened the gap between the Sun Moon Empire and the top combat powers among the three great Douluo empires. Unaware of how his fame had swelled, Kong Ming'an kept to himself, drilling into his soul skill modules. By the end of the first semester at the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy, he had mastered every soul skill module beyond the Spirit Ring level, and had finally condensed the soul skill module that activated the undead demigod plane into his Spirit Ring. Phew, finally done. He sank onto the futon, hair disheveled from months of seclusion, but his eyes were bright. Teleportation, spatial barrier, spatial severance, spatial domain, he muttered. A single 10,000-year spirit beast can have 26 different spirit abilities if you break them down, yet a spirit master normally gets only one spirit ring. I don't know if the traditional spirit master system is just wasteful or if it was deliberately designed to take advantage of the spirit beasts. The more he thought about the spirit master system, the more its inefficiencies and resource waste irritated him. In such a limited framework, no one had managed to optimize or break through its constraints after 10,000 years. Was that because of suppression and monopoly by the noble spirit master class? Kong Ming'an couldn't tell. He shook his head and focused on the module he had just inscribed to open the undead demigod plane. As he poured spirit power into it, faint spatial ripples expanded in front of him, and a gray door suffused with an aura of sanctity and death slowly manifested. The undead demigod plane, an independent small world separate from the Douluo plane, vast enough to store living beings and openable from anywhere within the Douluo plane. His mental force touched the threshold, and his consciousness slipped through. Inside, silent auras pressed against him like a hush. Countless skeletons lay dormant across that expanse. Ordinary bones, undead knights, even dozens of bone dragons the size of small mountains. Their presences were latent, but a steady, cold undead fire burned within each form. With the authority Old Yi had granted him, Kong Ming'an could command them and wake them instantly. Seeing that vast undead host made him understand how Old Yi had been able to overthrow entire worlds. Old Yi had once said this was only a small fraction of his undead legions. Their true peak strength was far greater. Another trump card, Kong Ming'an thought, and a wave of relief passed through him. He withdrew his consciousness from the demigod plane, rose from the futon, and instead of leaving through the laboratory's main entrance, he toyed with the spatial elements around him. Silver-white ripples gathered and enveloped him. In a flash, the laboratory blurred, and then the light receded. He had arrived at his own room. He let warm water wash the fatigue away, changed into a clean white casual outfit, checked his reflection in the full-length mirror, adjusted his collar, and thought over his next moves. He planned to find Miss Meng to check on her cultivation and the affairs of the Ming'an Merchant Association, and he still needed to visit Shrek City. Satisfied, he pushed open the door and walked the quiet, solemn corridor that led through the inner halls of the Kong family mansion, areas ordinary people were barred from. Rounding a corner by his laboratory entrance, he paused. A girl sat tucked behind the wall nearby, as if hiding. She looked about his age in a light purple dress with a neat sun-moon royal emblem on the skirt. White stockings covered her legs and her short, lilac hair curled softly. Her delicate face, lively yet anxious, peered toward the laboratory door with sharp, deep purple eyes. She seemed strangely out of place. Kong Ming'an slipped on a mimetic mask Jing Hongqian had made for him and approached quietly from behind. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" he asked. The question made her jump. She spun around, and when she saw his ordinary face, she relaxed visibly. She recognized him faintly and, reassured that he wasn't who she'd feared, smiled a flustered, apologetic smile. "You scared me to death. I thought it was someone else." She introduced herself quickly. "Hello, my name is Shu Tianzhen." Then, with a tone that mixed confidence and familiarity, she added, "You look like you know the Kong family well. You must be one of them, right?" Kong Ming'an raised an eyebrow. The situation felt off. "What do you want?" he asked instead of answering directly. "I came to find my fiancée." Shu Tianjin said it as if it were the most natural fact in the world. Kong Ming'an's curiosity pricked. He let a subtle push of mental force guide his reply. "Fiancé?" "Yes. It was arranged by my imperial father and grandfather Kong. I haven't even met him." She spoke with a little resentment at the edges of her voice. "I heard he spends all his time in the laboratory. Such a strange man. But he does look handsome in the photos." She sighed. "Still, he can't just disappear all day, can he? I've been waiting out here for a month or two, and he still hasn't come out." Chapter 26. Isn't the princess just a bargaining chip for marriage? Seeing the girl's defiant little face, Kong Ming'an felt an odd twinge inside. In his mind, princesses were usually one of two types, spoiled and willful, or poised and elegant. The girl in front of him fit neither. He narrowed his eyes and let his mental force, thin, invisible threads, steer the conversation. "Don't you have any objections to your imperial father's arrangements?" "What objections could I have?" Su Tianzhen replied plainly. "I'm a princess. I've enjoyed all the privileges that come with that, so it's only natural I fulfill a princess's duties. Aren't princesses meant to be used for political marriages?" "Don't be naive," she added with an indifferent shrug. "It's not some fairy tale. Princes are just like that." Then, with a hint of sarcasm, "But I heard you were His Majesty's most beloved daughter?" Kong Ming'an probed further. "Beloved? Please. If he loved me, why would he send me off in a political marriage?" Her tone was faintly mocking, as if she considered the idea childish. "This engagement has been dragging on forever. My father kept hesitating, wanting to pick one of my less remarkable older or younger sisters. Then a few months ago, after Grandfather Kong came out of seclusion and displayed his 98th level spirit power to my father immediately decided on me." "Do you think that's love?" she asked flatly. Kong Ming'an found himself intrigued. The girl was clearer-headed than she appeared, practical, not idealistic. He saw in her a sober acceptance rooted in her status, a trust in his grandfather's authority, and a measure of confidence in the match because the groom was attractive. No romantic rebellion, only realism. Rare. He let his mental guidance fade. The moment it left, a flicker of confusion crossed Shu Tianzhen's lively eyes. She abruptly became aware of how much she had said to a stranger. Her face tightened. Who are you exactly?" She took a half step back, wary. A guess crossed her mind that made her expression shift. Kong Ming'an suppressed a smile, removed the disguise mask he had been wearing, and looked up at the purple-haired girl. "I'm the fiancé you were just talking about." Shu Tianzhen froze. The face was familiar, and for a beat she could only whisper, Kong Ming'an?" "Yes, it's me." She blinked, stunned. Wasn't he always holed up in the lab? Why had she never seen him come out? And how was he so good-looking? The realization that she had spilled intimate thoughts, calling the imperial family out, talking about complaining to Grandfather Kong, hit her like ice. Did you remember everything I said?" Her voice trembled, pleading. Kong Ming'an nodded. "I remembered some." She let out a tiny, relieved breath, then saw him casually pull a silver fingernail-sized metal chip from his pocket and wave it before her. "Most of it was recorded. Want me to play it back? About strange guy, marriage obligations, and so on." "No, delete it. Delete it now." Shu Tianzhen snapped, dropping all pretense of princessly reserve. She lunged to snatch the chip and, desperate, offered, Please, delete it. If you delete it, I'll even warm your bed." The sudden offer made Kong Ming'an instinctively step back. Even his normally unflappable composure wavered at the frankness of her words. The corner of his mouth twitched. Shu Tianzhen, however, showed no embarrassment, only raw urgency. Before she could grab it, Kong Ming'an gave a small flick of his wrist, and the chip vanished. He watched her deflated, exasperated expression for a moment, then leaned in close to her slightly flushed ear. With a faint smile and a voice only she could hear, he said, "How could I give it back to you? Your little secret. I'll savor it for a lifetime." Straightening, he smiled once more and walked away, no longer looking at the dazed girl. He was headed to see his grandfather about this political marriage. Behind him, Shu Tianzhen stood stunned, those words ringing in her head. She hadn't even married in yet, and he already had leverage over her. Her carefully imagined plan, manipulate the dull, handsome researcher, fall in love gradually, live a quiet, happy life, was already crumbling. If she married him now, wouldn't she be tormented every day? Her mind scrambled, then snapped back. She turned just in time to see him rounding a distant corner. Without hesitation, driven by a single instinct, Shu Tianzhen took off after him. At the very least, she had to destroy that leverage first. Chapter 27. Family Tree. In the Kong family mansion, in the garden pavilion, a cup of clear tea gave off pale wisps of steam, but it did nothing to ease the obvious helplessness on Kong Ming'an's face. He put down his cup, looked at his composed elder across from him, and could not hide his complaint. "So, you sold your own grandson off without telling me?" Kong Deming sat upright in the main seat, his silver moon robe immaculate. He took a calm sip of tea and let his gaze drift over the neatly trimmed flowers and trees outside the pavilion before answering in an even, unhurried voice. "I told you about it beforehand. It was only delayed. Now it's being brought up again. His Majesty is serious this time. He's sincere. Besides," he looked back at Kong Ming'an with a detached, knowing expression, "I don't see you objecting either." Kong Ming'an was momentarily at a loss. Object? He couldn't honestly say he did. He was simply surprised by how suddenly events were being set in motion. He glanced subconsciously to his side. Next to him, Shu Tianzhen sat primly, or at least appeared to. She acted like a well-behaved listener to the elders, but all her attention was on Kong Ming'an. With tiny, cautious movements, she was trying to fish something out of his pocket. That damned metal recording chip. Her hand was furtive and careful, and she kept an innocent look on her face, but her bright purple eyes and slightly puffed cheeks betrayed her intention. Kong Ming'an's lips twitched. The situation felt oddly peculiar. By rights, Shu Tianzhen's behavior was a serious breach of boundaries, enough to cause annoyance. Yet she was so direct, a little clumsy even, and combined with her whole laid-back but sharp princess attitude and the determined little thief act, it was hard for him to be truly displeased. Perhaps two negatives made a positive. This thought popped into his head unaccountably. Kong Deming noticed the subtle exchange between them, but didn't comment. He smoothly returned to the matter at hand. "Marriage, in this case, is an extra layer of insurance," he said earnestly. "You're stronger than I am, boy. Among His Majesty's princes, none are truly outstanding. Shu Tianzhen is acceptable, but his motives aren't right. He hungers for control and tends toward extremes. If Shu Tianzhen rises to power and I'm gone, and if you remain as lax as you are now, he will be wary of you. He'll test you until he crosses a line?" Kong Ming'an finished for him. "You've got a clear self-awareness." Kong Deming nodded slightly. "If that happens, it could turn bloody," the elder continued. "If you have that on your mind, don't shoulder everything alone. Take that position. My only stipulation is that the emperor after you must be your and Tianzhen's child, so the Sun-Moon imperial bloodline continues." Those words were calm but grave, heavy with consequence. The air in the pavilion seemed to tighten. Shu Tianzhen, in the act of pilfering, froze. Her fingers retracted from the pocket as if burned. What? Had she really heard that? Bloody storm. That position. Bloodline continues. This was far beyond her original plan of quietly functioning as a marriage prop, cultivating feelings in advance, and finding a backer. She sat up straight, her face taut. Her eyes darted everywhere but at Kong Deming and Kong Ming'an. She wished she could become a column or slip into a crack between the paving stones, anything to vanish. Her expression screamed, "I didn't hear anything. I don't exist. Please don't make me speak." Kong Ming'an glanced at the nervous girl beside him and then back at his grandfather with a helpless look. Kong Deming saw it too and smiled subtly. It seemed his grandson did not despise Tianjin after all. Satisfied, he shifted the subject. With a flick of his wrist, an old thread-bound booklet appeared in his hand. 2 antique characters were written on the cover, Kong Clan Genealogy. All right, since that's settled, we need not say more. He pushed the genealogy toward Kong Ming'an. This is what you asked me to investigate over a year ago. I had Zhou Ping's son return to the ancestral home to sort it out, and we did find something. As you suspected, there's a branch of the family on the Heaven Soul Empire side. It's been out of contact for a long time. It stems from a Kong woman who married out many years ago. Kong Ming'an took the booklet, but didn't flip it open immediately. He asked simply, "If there are descendants? If they're willing, bring them back. If they aren't, don't force them," Kong Deming replied. "But if any of their descendants manifest a legacy spirit," his eyes sharpened, "bring them back or kill them. The Sun-Moon legacy spirit cannot be left outside our control." "Understood. If I meet someone I can't handle, I'll call you," Kong Ming'an said. Kong Deming frowned. "There really is one?" "Yes, at Shrek." The elder's brow tightened further. If it were anything else, the matter would be simpler. But Shrek, that could set off a chain reaction. "Don't worry, I'll see if I can recruit them." He watched as Kong Ming'an slipped the genealogy into his storage spirit tool. Kong Ming'an stood. "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Kong Deming sighed. "All right, handle it yourself." Kong Ming'an nodded and turned to go. Tianjin, still trying to be invisible, snapped to attention. She hurriedly rose and bowed. "Grandfather Kong, then I will also take my leave." She almost tiptoed after him. She fell into step half a pace behind him, her eyes flicking to the pocket that might contain the evidence. She wanted to speak, but hesitated. Kong Ming'an noticed her gaze and found it oddly amusing. He checked Meng Hongqian and Xiao Hongqian's real-time status through his spirit tool communicator. "They're both cultivating," he murmured, dismissing the idea of seeking them out now. Suddenly he stopped and turned. Xu Tianjin, following closely, nearly ran into him and skidded to a halt. She looked up, small face full of confusion and a touch of nervousness. Kong Ming'an's curiosity piqued. He leaned down slightly to meet her bright eyes. "Isn't it boring, always staying in the palace?" he asked. "Huh?" Xu Tianjin blinked, startled, and then replied on impulse. "It's all right." A faint smile tugged at the corner of Kong Ming'an's mouth. "Would you like to go out for a walk?" Xu Tianjin blinked again. "Ah." Chapter 28, Mingmeng Chamber of Commerce. Shrek City, top floor of the Mingmeng Chamber of Commerce residence, the president's office. The room was quiet and elegant, the air laced with the faint scent of books and an expensive spice. Suddenly, the space rippled like water, and a gray grating, a kind of solemn stillness, appeared out of nowhere and silently swung open. Kong Ming'an stepped through, his expression as calm as ever. Close behind him, Xu Tianjin poked her head out cautiously, eyes alight with tentative curiosity. She scanned the office. Its style was unmistakably different from that of the Sun-Moon Empire, then turned to look at the gray door, which was fading from view. Shock registered across her face. "Weren't we just in Mingdu? Is this really Shrek City?" Her voice was dazed. Instantaneous, 1,000-mile travel was something she couldn't fathom. "See for yourself," Kong Ming'an said casually, pointing toward the large floor-to-ceiling window. Xu Tianjin walked over and peered down at the street. Unlike the metallic sheen and soul engineer brilliance of Mingdu, the avenues below felt older, more solid, steeped in a sense of history. The streets were bustling. Students in Shrek uniforms went in and out of the building beneath them, each wearing different expressions. The realization hit her again. No, she really had come to Shrek City. By her understanding, even a titled Douluo couldn't so readily transport someone across such a distance. Could it have been a level 9 soul engineer fixed-point bomb? But given how effortless her arrival had felt, that seemed unlikely. What if it had been to somewhere else entirely, the Sun-Moon Imperial Palace? Her expression tightened as her mind spun through possibilities. How is this done?" she asked, voice low. "It's just a simple use of space." Kong Ming'an replied, calm as ever. The truth was straightforward. They were using the undead demigod plane as a transit hub. Enter from Mingdu into the demigod plane, trigger a preset device, and a door opens at the corresponding location in Shrek City. Out through the door, and you arrive instantly. The method consumed little energy, placed virtually no limit on distance, and was remarkably stable. Its only real drawback was a longer activation and shutdown time, which made it impractical in combat. Kong had provided the idea. Elix had implemented it after a few tries. The result was a highly useful transport system. Shu Tianzhen looked at him, chastened inwardly. Simple use, she thought bitterly. With something like that, he could reshape the whole Douluo continent. She pursed her lips and decided not to press. The more she learned about certain things, the more trouble they could invite, and there was still no real trust between her and her fiancé. Better to treat today as nothing more than a sightseeing trip. She stood by the window, quietly watching the city below. Kong Ming'an did not disturb her. He walked to the desk and pressed an inconspicuous button on its surface. A moment later, someone gently knocked and then opened the office door. A woman entered, wearing a well-tailored black work uniform that emphasized a graceful figure. At first glance, her demeanor seemed a little cool. Her chestnut hair was neatly tied back, and a delicate half-rimmed pair of glasses rested on her nose, behind which her eyes were intelligent and composed. The coolness vanished the instant she saw Kong Ming'an, replaced by a warm, sisterly affection. "President, you're back." Her voice was soft and respectful, with an easy closeness. "Juzi." Kong Ming'an inclined his head. Shu Tianzhen's attention snapped to the newcomer. She straightened instinctively and studied the woman from the corner of her eye, taking in every slight movement. Kong Ming'an noticed and introduced. "This is Juzi, Vice President of the Mingmeng Chamber of Commerce, responsible for all our affairs in the Douluo Three Kingdoms. Sister Juzi, this is Tianzhen. She's accompanying me on a visit to Shrek City." His tone was matter-of-fact. Juzi pushed up her glasses, smiled politely at Shu Tianzhen, and then turned to Kong Ming'an, her expression shifting to business. "President, what would you like me to do now?" "Proceed as usual." He sat down and assumed a professional air. Juzi nodded and launched into her report with the steady, practiced cadence of someone who had done this many times. "The Chamber's operations have been excellent lately. Last month's net profit rose 35% year-on-year, primarily due to rare soul engineer materials and high-precision parts transported through our transit station, which are currently scarce in the Three Kingdoms market. Mining of various rare mineral veins across the Three Kingdoms continues. Thanks to the transit station, these resource transfers remain completely hidden from public view. Our Enlightenment project funded 17 civilian Spirit Master and Soul Engineer talents this quarter. All have signed contracts. Infiltration of Shrek Academy is proceeding as planned. 3 insiders have already entered the core disciple circle. We've recently recruited 1 level 5 Soul Engineer and 2 Spirit Emperors. According to our investigations, graduates from Shrek show a noticeably increased willingness to join the Chamber. In Shrek's Outer Court Spirit Department, 5 teachers have established cooperative relationships with us. They're selling admission quotas. The evidence for this is sealed and available for review at any time. We've established the headquarters of Mingmeng Daily and have covertly controlled or supported 3 smaller newspaper agencies with different editorial angles, forming an initial communications network. As instructed, while we report ordinary news and gossip from various countries, we also insert some confirmed negative information about Shrek Academy. For example, teacher monopolies, student bullying, unfair task assignments, internal factional infighting. These pieces are beginning to produce different voices among the lower ranks. Her presentation was organized, precise, and delivered without reference papers. Data flowed from her as if it were second nature. Kong Ming'an listened quietly, eyes thoughtful. Shu Tianzhen watched the exchange with growing unease. The Chamber's reach, and the subtlety with which it shaped public opinion, was far greater than she had imagined. Chapter 29, Shrek Collapse Plan. Listening to Sister Juzi's report, Kong Ming'an nodded slightly, a flash of understanding in his eyes. All the moves he'd made in the Douluo Three Kingdoms boiled down to 5 things: economic infiltration, resource plundering, talent acquisition, structural penetration, and public opinion control. A war between the Sun-Moon Empire and the Douluo Three Kingdoms was inevitable. He would unquestionably support the Sun-Moon Empire. That was unchangeable. So every arrangement aimed at undermining the Douluo Three Kingdoms had a purpose. The newspaper agency was never just a smearing machine for Shrek. Its real function was to build a vast intelligence network across the Three Kingdoms and subtly manipulate public opinion. With Iliek's undead demiplane used as a relay, the ultra-fast information transmission network let Ming'an's papers break stories a step ahead of others, securing an absolute edge in timeliness and monopolizing the market. The Enlightenment Plan and the recruitment of Shrek graduates were not merely charity. Shrek had produced many talented people. Not recruiting them would be wasteful. Even if they couldn't be lured directly into the Sun-Moon Empire, they could serve as outward faces for the business association and keep its operations running inside the Douluo Three Kingdoms. Shu Tianzhen, standing nearby, was completely stunned. She looked at the young man roughly her age and listened to the schemes of infiltration, talent poaching, intelligence gathering, and public opinion manipulation, feeling overwhelmed. No, who had said this guy only did experiments in his lab and was dull and easy to manipulate? Was he really that easy to control? She remembered Kong Deming's remark that he can be replaced. She had been skeptical before, but now she felt an inexplicable, deep agreement. Kong Ming'an, having finished listening to Sister Juzi's orderly report, admired her skill even more. He asked, "And the thing I asked you to do before, what's the result?" Sister Juzi nodded, taking a thin folder from her spirit tool. "It's been verified. Zhang Lexuan, 18 years old, spirit power rank 68. Her spirit is Moon, extremely powerful. She's the captain of this generation's Shrek 7 Devils and holds high status in the academy." As for her background, Shu Tianzhen, whose ears had been pricked up the whole time, suddenly interrupted, eyes wide. "Moon spirit?" Kong Ming'an had apparently expected that reaction and only nodded. "Yes, the branch family I mentioned to grandfather earlier, that's her line." Understanding flickered across Shu Tianzhen's face. She said no more, but her gaze sharpened. "How effective was the planted news?" Kong Ming'an asked. "The effect exceeded expectations," Sister Juzi replied calmly. "We scattered vague information fragments in places she might encounter, phrases like Sun-Moon Empire Kong family, Silver Moon spirit, and Imperial family legacy. She grew suspicious and began investigating her own background, even placing a commission with our association to dig into it. And the negative reports about Shrek, they were distributed as well. She produced another document and placed it before Kong Ming'an. These negative items are all factual, without exaggeration, so she could accidentally find them while searching her background. She continued, but it seems she cares even more about allegations of corruption within Shrek. Even if it's only a possibility, she'll actively hunt for proof. And as long as she searches, our people will make sure the evidence ends up in her hands at the right time. Sister Juzi added, according to internal sources within Shrek, some of the old masters in the Sea God Pavilion have complaints about her, saying she resorts to mob justice, acting like judge and executioner without trial. Very good. Kong Ming'an's praise was genuine. Sister Juzi, you did very well. Sister Juzi paused. A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved her lips. She bowed slightly. It's my duty, Chairman. The report finished. Sister Juzi did not linger. She left at once, though she bowed briefly to Shu Tianzhen on her way out. The office door shut behind her. Only then did Shu Tianzhen, who had been sitting nearby, finally restrain herself no longer. Curiosity poured out. So the target is Zhang Lexuan? Only partly, Kong Ming'an said. She's important, she has the moon spirit, but she's not the whole plan. Why not eliminate her, like Grandfather Kong suggested? Wouldn't that be simpler? Shu Tianzhen asked bluntly. Am I that bloodthirsty? Kong Ming'an gave her a reproving look, then spoke slowly. She's of the moon spirit lineage. By the family tree, she's almost a clan sister to me. There's no need to kill her outright. Besides, her personality is actually easy to win over. It will take time, but it's doable. And wouldn't it be better if she were the one to tear Shrek apart from the inside? A benevolent smile crossed his face. Shrek Academy looked imposing on the outside, but it was strong in appearance and weak at its core. Rotten foundations, internal problems, and a lack of top-level combat strength. Kong Ming'an was placing a few more parasites in that decayed structure to hasten its collapse, waiting for the right moment to deliver the fatal blow. He had even devised plots aimed at Ming'an, master of the Sea God Pavilion, but with the current balance of power, such moves would be too costly. It was wiser to disassemble the institution from within, piece by piece, and use it to nourish and cultivate his own forces in the meantime. Xu Tianjin understood enough to feel uneasy, and then forced herself to stop thinking about it. Some truths were safer left partially unknown. Muttering her personal code to calm herself, she suddenly felt a hand take hers. She looked up, puzzled. "I promised to show you around Shrek City," Kong Ming'an said with a small smile. "I wouldn't break my promise." Xu Tianjin went still for a moment, then her eyes sparkled. Her fiancé seemed quite considerate after all. "Let's go," she said, grabbing his hand and pulling him out. Shrek Academy, Inner Court. In the mimicry training room, a girl of about 17 or 18 sat cross-legged in meditation. Her countenance was calm and refined, an exquisite, gentle face. Moonlight streamed through the window and washed over her fair, translucent skin, lending a cool, serene glow to the quiet chamber. She had been cultivating in silence when the outer door opened and a voice called from outside, breaking the stillness. "Sister Lexuan, your confinement is over." Chapter 30. Zhang Lexuan's hesitation. Two women came out of the cultivation room together. One had a slightly fiery temperament, the other was as gentle as flowing water. They were Zhang Lexuan's close friends, Wu Ming, the Golden Crow Holy Maiden, and Han Ruoro, the Golden Fairy. "Lexuan, time's up." Han Ruoro's voice was soft, touched with reluctance. The halo around Zhang Lexuan faded, her long eyelashes fluttered, and she opened her eyes. The month of seclusion had pushed her cultivation to rank 69, but there was no joy at a breakthrough, no relief at the seclusion ending. Only a deep, unyielding weariness and silence sat on her face. She rose without a word, only nodding slightly to her friends before walking out. Wu Ming watched her and hurried to catch up, indignation coloring her tone. "Sister Lexuan, honestly, you didn't do anything wrong. That scoundrel, relying on his father being an elder, how much filth has he gotten away with? He forced hard-working students to their deaths and got off scot-free. Killing him was ridding people of a scourge." Han Ruoro slipped an arm through Zhang Lexuan's and spoke gently, trying to comfort her. "That's right, Lexuan. Don't be too hard on yourself. The dean and elders made you go into seclusion, but everyone knows you were in the right." Zhang Lexuan paused but remained silent. Right? Wrong? Her heart was a storm. Her family had been destroyed by ruthless spirit masters. That was why, after being adopted by Elder Mu, she had treated Shrek as her only home. She cultivated there quietly, made friends like Ruoro and Wu Ming, and spent a few simple, happy years. She had taken Shrek to be a pure place, a bastion of light and justice. But about a year ago, all those impressions began to fray. She had stumbled on vague clues about her past and, out of curiosity, started asking questions. What she found beneath Shrek's celebrated reputation surprised her. Instructors embezzling student resources, senior students bullying juniors, and other sordid things. At first, she still believed the academy to be fair. Each time she found wrongdoing, she reported it. Initially, those reported were punished, which comforted her. But she soon learned those punishments could be superficial. Not long after, the same people would resurface in different roles, sometimes even promoted. When she protested, higher-ups offered vague answers and urged her to consider the bigger picture. Then came the logistics director she reported for embezzlement. Only after Zhang Lexuan complained directly to Elder Mu was the matter handled seriously. She told herself it was an isolated case. So long as the top was clean, Shrek would remain righteous. But the incidents kept coming. The worst involved a teacher responsible for logistics procurement who preyed on students in work-study programs. His exploitation and cruelty drove several students to take their own lives. Zhang Lexuan collected evidence and reported him. She watched as the enforcement team led him away, feeling justice had been done. Then she saw him again. One day, she went to Ming'an Commerce to pick up a spirit tool she had ordered and to check on an inquiry about a moon spirit. At the entrance of the most luxurious restaurant nearby, she recognized the teacher who should have been punished. He walked arm in arm with a companion, flushed with joy and utterly without remorse. Compelled, she followed and hid in an adjacent private room. She heard him boast, "A few days in detention is nothing. My old man is an elder. Who in Shrek dares touch me? Those weaklings were just fragile. They deserved it. The money we saved will let us live it up for a year or two." Everything inside her burst. She confronted him. He was drunk, brazen, remorseless, full of insults and arrogant claims he'd be out soon. She lost control and acted. In the end, amid his final curses, she couldn't restrain herself, and the consequences followed. The Academy's judgment was swift and cold. Dean Yan Xiaojie suppressed the incident rather than report it, but many elders, especially the teacher's father, were furious at her, acted first, reported later disrespect. In the end, merits and demerits canceled out, and she was forced into a month of seclusion for reflection. Zhang Lexuan could not understand why high elders would ignore the crimes of their kin, why face and stability trumped the most basic justice. She began to see Shrek, the place she had once been willing to give her all for, as something strange and suddenly cold. She breathed deeply, tamped down the tide of emotion, and forced a smile. "I'm fine now. It's only been a month. The spirit tool I ordered at Ming'an Commerce should be ready. I'm going to pick it up." Wu Ming and Han Ruo exchanged a look and didn't press further. They simply followed her. In Shrek City, Ming'an Commerce had begun to change things. Compared to the Academy's general reluctance about civilian spirit tools, Ming'an's arrival started a new trend. Practical, convenient civilian spirit tools were spreading among ordinary people and some spirit masters. Shrek Academy had largely kept them out, officially because of tradition and the Spirit Department's philosophy. Unofficially, there were rumors the Academy's Spirit Tool Division couldn't replicate the core components. Still, many students were drawn to these novel devices and bought them privately. The Commerce's entrance buzzed with activity. As Zhang Lexuan stepped into the shop, her eyes swept casually across the crowd and then paused. Not far off, a young man caught her attention, too handsome for his years, calm and gentle in a way that didn't fit the bustle around him. At his side, a short-haired girl with pale purple hair clung to his arm, chattering with curiosity. The odd pair and the young man's arresting presence made Zhang Lexuan look twice. Wu Ming followed her gaze and lit up. She nudged Zhang Lexuan and whispered with a laugh, "Wow, what a handsome little brother. Sister Lexuan, you like this type, don't you?" Zhang Lexuan snapped back, a flicker of awkwardness crossing her face. "Don't be ridiculous. I just thought he was different." Wu Ming snorted in disbelief and stole a few more glances. "He is different, so young, taking little girls out to play. Too bad he's too young. If he were older, I might not be able to resist." Zhang Lexuan gave her friend a helpless look. Wu Ming was all talk, boastful and loud, but she kept any real suitors at bay. Zhang Lexuan took one last look at the youth, swallowed the strange, uneasy feeling that had risen in her chest, and followed her friends further into Ming'an Commerce. At the other end of the shop, Kong Ming'an, being pestered by Shu Tianzhen with questions, sensed something. His gaze drifted casually toward the entrance, then slowly returned. It felt like they could all be poached. Indeed, poaching was a slippery slope. Once you started, you couldn't stop. Chapter 31. Classic Jokester. After spending a day with Shu Tianzhen in Shrek City, the two returned to Mingdu that evening via the undead demigod plane. The princess had enjoyed herself immensely. Even her purple eyes seemed to shine brighter, giving her an inexplicable beauty. Surprisingly, Shu Tianzhen didn't ask Kong Ming'an to take her out again. She was carefree and a little wild, but always maintained an appropriate decorum. Honestly, it was impossible to bear ill will towards someone with her personality. After seeing her off, Kong Ming'an settled back into his routine. He began drafting schedules for upcoming matters, and his daily life gradually found a steady rhythm. He spent most days with Ilyax in the laboratory, researching the essence of spirit rings and exploring further applications, constantly optimizing his own spirit rings. Spirit ring research would be a major focus for a long time. He also made regular visits to the military camp to monitor the progress of the latest soldiers' training under the improved body tempering method, and to the Hall of Worship to collect training samples from rank 9 soul engineers practicing the ring tempering method. Both projects were long-term, requiring frequent data refinement, patience, and a large number of samples. Overall, his days were satisfyingly full. A few months later, a soul engineer carriage sped toward the military camp on Mingdu's outskirts. Kong Ming'an sat quietly in the back while Starry Sky Douluo Yeyulin drove. Compared to a few months earlier, Yeyulin's aura had deepened. He had broken through, his spirit power now at rank 95. For a newly advanced rank 95 powerhouse to act as a personal protector and even chauffeur spoke volumes about how important this young master was to the Sun Moon Empire. Kong Ming'an watched the scenery slip by and let his thoughts drift. Xiao Hongqian and Meng Hongqian had shown astonishing progress. Before 10 years old, both had gained their third spirit ring, each ring with a lifespan exceeding 6,000 years. They might very well become spirit kings by 15. Their talent was terrifying. And the princess had slipped effortlessly into their little circle, especially bonding with Meng Hongqian. They would huddle together, whispering, and sometimes glance at him in ways that left him puzzled. The way Miss Meng and the princess interacted was nothing like he'd expected. Girls' minds were harder to fathom than spirit ring parameters. At court, Shu Tianran had been officially named Crown Prince months ago. Less than 2 months after the appointment, a carefully orchestrated assassination attempt struck. Without Juzi's appearance from the original account, Shu Tianran's fate had been worse. His legs were shattered and his left side blasted by violent spirit power. Imperial physicians saved his life, but his left arm couldn't be salvaged, and ultimately 4 out of his 5 limbs were lost. Remarkably, he didn't sink into despair. He endured his crippled body and insisted on handling state affairs. The emperor praised his endurance and dispatched people to search for the heaven and earth treasure to cure him at any cost. On the surface, the crown prince's position seemed more secure than ever. Then, screech, the carriage braked hard, skidding to a halt and twisting sideways on the road. Kong Ming'an's thoughts snapped off. He looked up to see a hulking figure, like an iron tower, step into the road ahead. He felt it before he understood it. A suffocating oppression descended from that person, an intense, undisguised, killing intent that seemed to clamp down on the surrounding space. Yeyulin's expression tightened. He moved in an instant. 9 spirit rings flared around him, 7 of them shattered in succession, and his aura exploded outward. "Young master, hurry! It's a super Douluo," he shouted, planting himself between Kong Ming'an and the threat. Kong Ming'an's pupils contracted. He didn't hesitate. The portal to the undead demigod plane opened behind him. But before he could step through, rip! The void was torn open by an extraordinarily pure force. Another figure flashed, hand changing into a claw that reached for his back. A second attacker had appeared. A rank 98 Super Douluo subdued Yeyulin, who had just reached the Super Douluo level, while another Limit Douluo launched an attack at Kong Ming'an, whose spirit power wasn't even rank 20, without restraint. This wasn't merely the strong bullying the weak, it was audacious brutality. Kong Ming'an had no time to object. Just before the other figure's strike landed, the eye of life on his brow, seemingly sensing the threat, opened with a burst of jade gold light. A vast life aura poured out, suffused with a solemn, sacred power, and it instantly wove an incredibly resilient life shield around him. At the same time, the small silver bracelet on his wrist reacted, unfolding layers of moon-like silver barriers that fully enveloped him, isolating everything inside from the outside. Buzz! Boom! The second attacker's hand slammed into the jade gold and silver-white defense. A terrifying energy wave erupted. The soul engineer carriage was blown apart. The ground caved and buckled. Spiderweb cracks spread everywhere. The jade gold life shield trembled wildly, and half of the layered silver moon barriers shattered. Inside, Kong Ming'an was completely unharmed. The limit-level full-force strike had been stopped dead. The attacker, De Ming, stared in disbelief, a frown forming. Under plane suppression, he couldn't use divine rank power. As a divine official, he was limited to the power of a limit Douluo, or he would be targeted by the plane. His previous blow had been a full-force limit-level strike. Apart from the top few on the Vicious Beast list, no one on the Douluo plane should be able to block it. Yet a child whose spirit power hadn't even reached Spirit Grandmaster level had stopped him, using only 2 external devices? An absurd thought rose into Ming's mind. What kind of thing had Tang San asked him to kill? Chapter 32. Da Ming. Tang San, you bastard! In Da Ming's original plan, the crucial part of the assassination wasn't killing the target itself, but the escape afterward. They had even prepared to use the many spatial rifts around the Heaven and Earth Asking Love Valley, not far from here, to leave the Douluo plain and get away. But now, the operation was stuck at the killing step. There was no time for second-guessing. Da Ming's hesitation was brief. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he prepared to press the attack and break through the defenses before him. Then, just as he moved, he saw the young man calmly take 4 more silver bracelets from his storage spirit tool, 2 for each wrist, and fasten them on without haste. Da Ming froze for a heartbeat. There were more? The air seemed to hold its breath. The 2 men facing him exchanged glances, but the young man showed no panic. His composure was startlingly mature for his age. A faint, playful chuckle escaped him. So, you were sent by Tang San? Da Ming's pupils constricted. How had they been exposed so suddenly? He hadn't spoken since the sneak attack began, only a few seconds. Had he already shown a weakness? Da Ming felt unease, but there was no time to puzzle. He condensed his spirit power and struck with another palm. Boom! Light filled the space above and below. Silence and a holy brightness dropped on the field. A gray stream of light fell from the sky and condensed into a gray phantom before Kong Ming'an. The phantom gripped a gray staff. 9 eerie gray spirit rings rotated lazily around it. Vast spirit power, laced with soul force bordering on divine rank, crashed down, locking onto Da Ming and wrapping the area in a domain woven of light and death. Iliex had descended onto the battlefield. "Are you all right, Ming'an?" Iliex's that voice asked. "I'm fine, old Iliex." Just a bit startled, Kong Ming'an's gaze was steady. He tried to open the door to the undead demiplane, but the space was sealed. Long-distance teleport was impossible. On the other side, Ye Yulin was already engaged with Ming. But how could someone who had only just advanced to Super Douluo match Ming? Ye Yulin's full power strike landed, yet Ming simply threw a punch and the pure force shattered countless star-like particles. Ye Yulin flew back, coughing blood. Ming beat his chest with both hands, and the phantom of a Titan giant ape rose behind him. With a sneer, he swung his massive palm toward Kong Ming'an and Iliex, only to be interrupted by another arrival. "Get lost!" The roar cracked the sky like thunder. A silver bolt of light sliced through the heavens, and a figure crashed down like a meteor, landing behind Kong Ming'an. Kong Deming had entered the fray. Without hesitation, Kong Deming's sun spirit manifested behind him, and 7 spirit rings, each over 90,000 years old, exploded into activity, roaring like unleashed tempests. Unparalleled violent energy poured into Kong Deming's body, and his aura surged, bursting outward. His spirit instantly switched to Silver Moon. 9 spirit rings bloomed, forcibly channeling and restraining the terrifying energy that threatened to tear him apart. Kong Deming tore off his research robe, revealing a massively muscled body. He didn't rely on any spirit tool, just a single punch. Silver moonlight and vital chi braided on his fist and struck Ming's incoming palm. Dong! The blow landed square on Ming's massive hand. A surge of force erupted. The Titan ape's towering body lurched backward, sent stumbling by a punch fueled by twin spirits and the ultimate physical training of a body cultivator. Ming's face registered disbelief. Both of them had roughly rank 98 spirit power, yet the spirit beast known for monstrous strength was outclassed by Kong Deming, who was labeled a mere civilian researcher in the gathered intel. Something stank. Ming's expression turned ugly, but Kong Deming remained composed. He stood near Kong Ming'an, silver hair whipping, muscles taut, vital chi burning like a furnace beneath his skin with faint steam rising from his pores. His eyes swept over Da Ming and Ming with the calm of lightning. "Ming'an? I'm fine," Kong Ming'an answered, calm as ever. He had suspected an assassination. The almost eerie timing of Iliex's arrival had told him he was set up. For his own safety, aside from improving himself, he had focused on strengthening the 2 greatest protectors behind him. His own rise would take 7 or 8 years. Iliex and Kong Deming, with established foundations, needed only 1 or 2 to become considerably stronger. The preparations were paying off. In truth, the situation was even better than he'd feared. In his worst-case scenario, Shrek Academy's titled Douluo, the entire Clear Sky sect, and the many 100,000-year spirit beasts loyal to the sea god might have descended on him. Instead, the two standing before him were, in their own right, like divine beasts. "Grandpa, old Iliex," Kong Ming'an said slowly. Kong Deming understood. He looked at Iliex beside him and said, "This one is mine." "Then this one shall be entrusted to me," Iliex replied calmly. The two ancient veterans, strangers until now, displayed an extraordinary harmony. Their auras shifted at once, and they surged forward with a speed that seemed to defy logic. Ming's face drained. Right before his eyes, the world's energy poured into those two in a siphoning flow. This wasn't some special spirit ability or technique. The plain will itself had intervened. Only then did Ming understand the true nature of the target he had been sent to kill. The young man who, by all accessible information, seemed unremarkable aside from his looks. He looked so composed, and the realization hit Ming like a wave of absurdity. The youth was a son of luck. Tongsan had sent them to kill a son of luck? Had he gone mad? Ming's expression hardened. He knew they had been set up by Tongsan, but hesitation was no longer an option. The plain will's attention would target mercilessly if they fled without killing the son of luck. They would be hunted down and cut to pieces, with no chance of survival. Only by striking down the son of luck, severely wounding the plain will's focus and buying themselves time, could they hope to escape. It was a tiny, desperate chance. "Second brother," Ming called. "Understood," Ming roared in answer. From both of them erupted a terrifying aura, far beyond what they had shown earlier. Though still contained within Limit Douluo, its quality had changed. Ming knew the stakes. If they failed, the plain will would destroy them. They had to try to kill the son of luck, no matter how slim the odds. They had no other choice. The battlefield had split in two. Ming struck first at Iliex. Lightning danced between his hands as his slowing domain dropped down, dragging Iliex into its radius. Inside the slowing domain, space and time seemed to thicken. Movement grew sluggish and difficult, and even the flow of spirit power nearly stopped. Of course, none of that affected Ming, master of the domain. His fists opened and closed, his spirit power, solidified into tangible force, poured into his strikes like a falling mountain, trying to crush Iliex outright. Even under the plane's suppression, which limited him to limit Douluo power, Ming was once a God-realm god official. His rank's transformation gave him precise control over his strength. In the few encounters over the last 10,000 years, that control had let him seize the advantage. He was confident, until, within the slowing domain, Iliex moved. 9 gray spirit rings flared at once, and the countless soul skill modules etched into them activated. The spell cultivator revealed himself. No chanting, no preparation, only thought, and a torrent of 9th-rank spells, altered by Iliex to fit the laws of the Douluo world, erupted in an instant. 12-fold necrotic sky curtain, shadows unfurled to blanket the area. 9 eternal ice coffins, locked onto the target. 36 great light divine judgments, stacked and detonated. There was no buildup, no pause, only an uninterrupted storm of 9th-rank magic, as if the spells were free to be cast forever. The slowing domain was devastating. Pushed to its limit, it could virtually stop the world. But even it couldn't block this. Area suppression, single-target lockdown, stacked explosions, all slowed to Ming's sight, but slowed or not, they still hit. High-level magic of utterly opposite elements and terrifying force pelted Ming like a storm, overwhelming the domain and piercing his defenses. Shock flashed across his face. This intensity was beyond Limit Douluo. Even he could only endure it with his body and the vestige of his divine foundation. What was this? Any ordinary Limit Douluo would have their spirit power exhausted, so why did Iliex's spirit not waver? His spirit seemed endless, never showing the slightest weakening while unleashing abilities of this scale. It was outrageous. On the other front, Ming had unleashed his own domain. The gravity domain pressed down, pinning Kong Deming. A bright, earthy yellow light surged from him, his spirit power amplified, and he threw a fist meant to split mountains and tear the earth apart. Kong Deming met it without flinch. As the foremost master of the body cultivator discipline, his chi and blood coiled like a dragon. Silver light clung to him, and his bulging muscles shone like forged platinum. He did not dodge. He met fist with fist, foot with foot. Boons of thunder rolled out as their collision ripped deep rifts in the earth. Ming's eyes widened. He was being suppressed in the very field he excelled in, and while his opponent remained inside his gravity domain, he was a titan giant ape. Even though his spirit rank had been lowered to 98 by plane suppression, equal to his opponent, he was being driven back. Kong Deming offered no quarter. He grasped with his right hand and the Silver Moon Divine Light Hood, his native spirit tool that had almost fused entirely with his Silver Moon spirit, appeared. He did not use it for defense. He yanked it as if hauling the moon from the sky, squeezing it into a small silver sphere in his hand, then brought it down like a giant warhammer with cold, destructive intent. Spirit power, physical might amplified by chi and blood, and the spirit tool, all three layered into the blow. Ming's chi surged. He staggered back and instinctively raised his arms, only to hear bone crack inch by inch as blood burst forth. Is this a scholar? Who had ever said soul engineers were physically weak and useless in close quarters? At this moment, both Da Ming and Ming were being utterly crushed, each feeling genuine mortal danger. If this continued, they would die. Da Ming's face hardened. He had hoped for a chance, but it had vanished. He sensed at least 3 more auras, at least limit-ranked, had locked onto their location, 2 of which were rapidly closing. There was no time left. "Second brother, break the seal," he roared. "Roar!" Ming answered. The seal inside each of them shattered. Though they still fought to suppress their rank, a thread of true god-official essence burst forth. Divine force Tong San had implanted in them after extracting his divine thought. He had deliberately weakened and masked it to avoid detection. It hadn't even reached the level of a second-rank divinity and was further dampened by the plane. But it was enough. Blue-gold divine light surged like a tidal wave. Phantoms of their true forms appeared behind them as their auras swelled wildly. With a simultaneous shout, they threw a pair of blows filled with that trace of divinity. The suppressed situation hiccuped. Their punches forced Iliex and Kong Deming back a few steps, carving the only opening for Kong Ming'an, who crouched protected behind them. There were 3 breaths. The Douluo plane forbade true divinity, and the God Realm's core monitored all planes. If anyone achieved divinity, it would send a guiding divine light. Spirit beasts were never allowed to attain divinity. These 2 had been sent to the lower realm by a certain flawless god king in a manner bordering on smuggling. If the god realm discovered them, annihilation would follow. Yet retreat was impossible. They had 1 breath to shove back the 2 overwhelming foes, 1 to attempt a killing strike, and a final one to flee. Their minds were clear. They could not hope for a certain kill. Their only chance was to draw the attention of those 2 overpowering existences by attempting to kill the target, then use the break and the divine surge to escape. They lunged recklessly, all-out killing attacks laced with divine residue, tearing through space so they landed within meters of Kong Ming'an. At the same moment, Iliex and Kong Deming answered. Sacred holy light and silver moon-streaked chi and blood converged first, poised to intercept. Then everything froze. It was as if an invisible hand had pressed pause on the world. The roaring divine fluctuations, the kicking dust, the crackling energy, Da Ming and Ming in mid-turn to flee, the defenses about to shield Kong Ming'an, all of it ossified. Only thought could move. Eyes from all 4, Iliex, Kong Deming, Da Ming, Ming, fell on the figure who had silently appeared at the center of the petrified battlefield, cloaked in purple. Without doubt, this was a divinity. At this moment, the god of destruction descended upon Douluo. The purple-robed figure walked toward Kong Ming'an with slow, deliberate steps. With a casual flick of his hand, he erased the attack that had had even the slightest chance of killing him. He wasn't cruel enough to torment a promising talent he favored. Still, he had to make sure things were absolutely foolproof and avoid any accidental deaths. At the same moment, the constraints around Kong Ming'an were lifted. Inside the silent world, he became the second presence who could move freely. He lifted his head without thinking and met a pair of eyes that held the image of annihilation itself, studying him with sharp interest. "Boy, are you not afraid of death?" came a majestic voice threaded with curiosity. Most mortals would tremble before a divinity, but seeing the god of destruction's posture, Kong Ming'an visibly relaxed. "How could I not be afraid of death?" he admitted. "I'm very afraid, actually. There's so much I haven't done yet. To die like this, it would be a terrible waste." "Then why have you accepted it?" the god asked. "I'm willing to admit defeat," Kong Ming'an said calmly. "Within my means, I made every possible preparation. Automatic triggers, multiple defensive spirit tools tailored against a limit Douluo, and 2 top-tier powerhouses I trust who can arrive instantly. Preemptive measures, layered contingencies. I ran through countless possibilities and built plans for them all. But if after all that I still can't escape death, it simply means I lost the gamble. I was outclassed. I'll accept that." A faint ripple of something like approval crossed the god of destruction's face. Ever since his god position shifted, and his wife, the goddess of life, had received hers as well, he had summoned his 7 deadly sins. 7 first-rank divinities had all turned their gaze on the same person and come to the same almost unanimous conclusion: a god-positioned successor has been found. That alone made the young man before him extraordinary. He displayed compatibility with every god position. It was unprecedented. The god had been prepared to step in earlier. This young man, however, had shown cunning, spirit defenses, trusted protectors. Everything had been thought through. Still, intervention had been necessary. The god of destruction's eyes narrowed, and in a tone that resembled a teacher testing a pupil, he said slowly, "I don't believe you left no contingencies." Kong Ming'an blinked and shrugged, even more relaxed than before. Without hesitation, he explained, "I split off some remnants of my soul beforehand and imprinted them with all my knowledge. They'll use the undead demiplane like Elder Yi did, and the moment I die, they'll flee the Douluo plane. They'll be driven by revenge as their core logic, growing frantically by any means until they reach first-rank divinity or even a god king. Then they'll launch suicidal vendettas against the targets I preset, never resting until they die." "That's not subtle," the god of destruction said, watching him closely as the young man laid out this almost grandiose revenge scheme. A corner of the god's mouth twitched. "If he can't live, he'll make sure others don't either." The idea pleased the god more than he expected. "This old man thinks you're a bit extreme," he said after a moment, voice flat. "It's fine," Kong Ming'an smiled, almost sheepish about his extremity, but unmoved. The god of destruction's expression softened into something like appreciation. Then he changed tack and offered an unexpected proposal. "This old man is the god of destruction, one of the 5 god kings of the god realm. Your temperament, your intellect, and your determination to drag others down with you, fit this god position quite well. Are you willing to accept my legacy? If you agree, I will give you a god examination. Pass it, and you can inherit the god of destruction god king position." Kong Ming'an fell silent. The offer was far beyond his expectations and highly tempting. Being a god king of destruction, one of the 5 god kings, meant surpassing most first-rank divinities by a large margin. It would launch him into a realm he could only dream of. But the invitation raised doubts more than eagerness. He knew himself well enough. Unless absolutely necessary, he avoided actions that would doom others. His father always said he was too kind. His nature, while not wholly incompatible with destruction, wasn't an ideal match. It wasn't his heart nature or his intellect that worried him. It was his spirit. His energy spirit allowed him to control all energy that belonged to him. The destructive power of the god of destruction might well count as a form of energy, making him technically compatible. By that logic, he could be compatible with every god position. The thought stunned him, and a curious idea began to form. He didn't answer the invitation. Instead, he asked politely, "Your Excellency Destruction, may I say a few words?" "Speak," the god replied, calm and indifferent. He had already decided to bring this young man into his camp today. If Kong Ming'an refused, he could take Little Green and confer 2 God King legacies at once. He wasn't worried about compatibility problems. Those only arose with mediocre talents. With someone of truly high compatibility, even multiple god positions were sustainable. He secretly entertained the thought that if this youth could carry both destruction and life, perhaps the glory of creation could be reborn. Kong Ming'an began, "For some reasons, I know a bit about the god realm, and I've learned a few things about you. Excellency, destruction. The god's face remained unreadable. Whether this youth was a transmigrator or a lucky reincarnate mattered little. Knowledge of the god realm wasn't unheard of. Kong Ming'an continued, unfazed. I heard from unofficial sources that you and the goddess of life have been married for many years, but have no children. The reason I heard was, you're impotent. The god of destruction's expression flickered. A hint of anger crossed his brow. Boy, do you know what you're saying? He barked. Kong Ming'an stayed composed. But I might be able to cure it. The god inhaled sharply. Elaborate. Chapter 35, Sea God Tang San. Do you admit your guilt? The principle is simple, Kong Ming'an said. Because your divine force is that of destruction, Lord Destruction, you lack life. And since you and the goddess of life are both god kings of the same rank, even if the goddess of life cannot dissolve your destructive force, the two powers will at best annihilate each other. In a state of mutual annihilation, offspring cannot be conceived. So what do you propose? The god of destruction asked. My first plan is to temporarily seal your divine force of destruction. If you reduce your power from God King down, temporarily retreat even to first-rank divinity, the balance between you and the goddess of life will be broken. Her power could then resolve the destructive force within you. Your strength would be greatly weakened for a time, but the chance of conceiving would increase significantly. The god of destruction considered this and found it feasible. It was only a temporary self-sealing. He was not the sort of god king who couldn't control his own god position. For an innate divinity like him, this was not hard. Indeed, it was almost trivial. Still, he asked, expression unreadable. And the second? Kong Ming'an smiled. My spirit is unusual. It controls all energy that belongs to me. Theoretically, if I had the divine force of destruction, I could analyze it, study it, and find a permanent solution. I can't do that now, but if I grow to divinity, I believe it won't be too difficult. The god of destruction narrowed his eyes and caught the implication. After a moment, he said, You want to use solving my fertility problem as leverage, so I'll protect you until you become a divinity. Lord Destruction is perceptive. The god of destruction frowned. I don't understand. That doesn't conflict with you inheriting my god position. If you take on my position, I will naturally protect you, and you would be able to control the divine force of destruction directly. Isn't that simpler than having you grow to divinity on your own and then spend time analyzing my force? You even have a demiplane, Kong Ming'an pointed out. You could bring everyone with you into the god realm and live forever. Isn't that an option? That is indeed very good. The god of destruction was puzzled but sincere. Kong Ming'an didn't object. In truth, he could accept inheriting the god of destruction's position and take the protection that came with it. He could pause the divinity trials, study the force, and eventually become a divinity that way. But he liked mutual benefit. Straightforward, fair bargains made him feel better. So, he said, eyes fixed on the god of destruction, what do you think of this trade? The god of destruction was silent for a moment, then a rare, faint smile curved his mouth. He regarded Kong Ming'an with growing approval. I accept your trade. Don't disappoint me. I'll do my best. Do your best? He chuckled. I'll give you 1 month, 30 years in the Douluo plane. If you still haven't become a divinity by then, honestly inherit the god of destruction's position. He waved his hand and set the deadline. Kong Ming'an felt a strange, fleeting sense of déjà vu, like an elder telling a junior, make your name in the world, and if you fail, come home and inherit the family business. He chuckled and nodded. Understood. The god of destruction was pleased. Compared to the Asura god who had irresponsibly abandoned a god position, this candidate at least had standards for his inheritor. With the most important matter settled, the god of destruction looked toward where Deming and Erming hung frozen, awaiting judgment. He raised his hand, about to take action, when Kong Ming'an spoke up. Lord Destruction, if possible, may I have them? He pointed at Daming and Erming. They're divine beasts. Killing them would be a waste. The god of destruction, familiar with Kong Ming'an's frugal pragmatism, understood immediately. The boy didn't want to waste resources. He nodded, and, with a gesture, stripped the trace of divine force from Deming and Erming's bodies and injected another wave of destructive divine force. Not the kind that augmented their strength, but one tuned for control and enslavement. He raised his hand again, and a triangular mark embedded with a sliver of the divine force of destruction appeared in Kong Ming'an's palm. "This is a divinity trial mark," the god of destruction explained. "With this, if anything happens to you, I can directly intervene, and with it you can control these two spirit beasts." "Thank you, Lord Destruction," Kong Ming'an said. "No need." The god of destruction waved his hand. "As you said, mutual benefit." Then he looked beyond their plane, beyond the present manifestation. He was only an incarnation. His main body would be aware of everything here. In the God Realm's committee hall, his main body sat within the divine hall, the goddess of life beside him. Opposite them, sea god Tangsan's face was grim. Purple light swirled around the god of destruction's main body, and the destructive divine force pinned Tangsan to his seat so firmly he could not move. Suppression by power, unlike outright fighting, was permitted so close to the god realm's core. Tangsan ground his teeth, frantically circulating his sea god's divine force to break the bonds, but he could not budge. A faint crimson rimmed his eyes as he glared at the god of destruction and snapped, "Destruction, you have overstepped. How dare you interfere in the lower realm?" "Interfere?" The god of destruction sneered, eyes narrow. "I am merely confirming an inheritor for a god position. How is that interference?" His voice then deepened into something authoritative. "Besides, if not for this, I would never have known how audacious you were. You allowed your subordinate god official to attempt to kill the plane's luck-favored child, to undermine the plane's future, and to attempt to murder the inheritor of a god position. Sea God Tangsan, do you admit your guilt?" Chapter 36, Will of the Plane, all in is a kind of wisdom. There was no doubt about it. This was an interrogation, and one backed by evidence. Tangsan's face went dark, but he answered without flinching. "Those two spirit beasts are indeed divine officials under my command, but I had no knowledge of their actions." He didn't hesitate. Instinctively, he severed ties with Deming and Erming, put distance between himself and the incident, and shifted responsibility. "I never ordered them to assassinate a child of luck, and I am a god king. The Douluo plane falls under my jurisdiction. Why would I act against a child of luck? Yes, you are already a god king. Why would you move against a child of luck?" The god of destruction repeated, looking at Tangsan with indifferent calm. Then he rose and spoke with solemn authority. "Initiate a vote of the God Realm Committee. Sea God's subordinate divine officials, Nutian and Titan, attempted to kill a child of luck on the Douluo plane. Their actions were improper. I propose stripping them of divine official status and demoting them to servants." The sea god indulged his subordinates and sought to interfere with the lower realm. "I propose temporarily suspending the sea god's direct observation and jurisdiction over the Douluo plane and temporarily sealing his god realm enforcer authority." Destruction. Tangsan's eyes widened, and he tried to stop him, but the god realm's central hub had already been activated under the god of destruction's authority. Light flared, and a virtual image of the God Realm Committee descended. "Let's vote. I vote in favor." The god of destruction had spoken first. In the next heartbeat, the gentle but firm voice of the goddess of life sounded. Seconded. Jidong and Li Yan, who had been watching, widened their eyes, exchanged glances, and hesitated. This was serious, heavier than previous clashes. It was not the first time the god of destruction had called for a vote to sanction the sea god. Historically, the goddess of life, Jidong, and Li Yan had either abstained or otherwise prevented resolution, and the sea god and god of destruction were left at an impasse. Now the goddess of life had sided with destruction. Silence stretched. Jidong and Li Yan, sharing a look of disbelief, raised their hands in unison. Abstain. Tangsan's face fell. 2 votes in favor, 2 abstentions. His position no longer mattered. Through the God Realm's central hub, he could feel his authority being taken from him. His direct observation and interference privileges over the Douluo plane, the arm he had used at will, were being sealed. It wasn't a complete severing of connection, but he could no longer observe the Douluo plane by ordinary means, and lingering to look would risk punishment under God Realm law. Sending decrees or divine thought was out of the question. The god of destruction shot Tangsan one indifferent glance, and then left the chamber with the goddess of life. Ji Dong and Li Yan fled even faster. Within moments, Tang San sat alone in the meeting hall. Thud! He slammed his fist on the table, fury and frustration radiating from him. Useless. They were useless, only making things worse. They couldn't even finish off a boy who wasn't even a spirit grandmaster. Crimson veins crawled across his eyes as his emotions surged. A faint dark red blood mist began to seep up around him. Buzz! Blue-gold sea god divine force exploded up from within him, struggling to dispel the dark mist and bringing a brief return of clarity to Tang San's sight. His expression calmed, though a shadow remained in his eyes. The Ashura god position within him was slipping from his control again. He could not fully master it. If this continued, Tang San stayed silent for a beat, using this hard-won moment of lucidity to frantically consider options. Then something clicked. He still had a divine thought he could use with the Clear Sky sect, and the god of destruction's words earlier. Tang San's eyes brightened, and a plan formed. They were all useless. In the end, he'd have to do it himself. He snorted, eyes sharpening with a cold, cunning resolve. Meanwhile, silently and inexorably, the plain will of the Douluo plane began reallocating luck again. Outside Star Luo City, in the White Tiger Duke's mansion, a small blue-haired boy knelt by his sick mother's bed, praying for her recovery. The plain will's great hand brushed over his head and took 3/4 of the last 40% of his luck. Where it took luck, the plain will rewrote destiny. A few days later, the boy would accidentally reveal his spirit eye spirit while going out to buy medicine for his mother. An elder of the body sect, passing by, would discover him, cure his mother, and take both of them away from the White Tiger Duke's mansion to the body sect. The boy's life would change, fewer hardships and fewer friends, but also less responsibility not his own, and a happier life under the protection of the body sect, a sect known for fierce protection and hot tempers. Hatred would remain, but now the boy would have the body sect standing behind him. The Plainwill's hand moved on, reaching toward the Star-Dew Great Forest. In the forest's core, by the Lake of Life, the golden big cat had just finished its brainflower supper and was preparing to sleep when it suddenly snapped awake, every hair on its body bristling. Auspicious beast? The black-robed middle-aged man and the green-skirted woman who shared the cat's company noticed it at once and turned their heads. Uncle D. Tian, my luck has been stripped away. The golden big cat's voice trembled, a sob woven into it. What? The black-robed man could barely sit still. The luck bearing on the Emperor Auspicious Beast represented the fate of their spirit beast race. If luck flowed away, it would affect their whole kind. This was disastrous. What's happened? Why has your luck been drained? I don't know, the golden cat said. I haven't done anything these past few days. At most, I ate a few too many brain flowers. Could eating too many brain flowers anger the heavens? It's a tonic. I'll just stop eating brain flowers. The black-robed man frowned, about to reply, when a majestic, clear voice rang out nearby. It's the Plainwill. Chapter 37. Curiosity from Miss Dragon King. The sudden voice left Ditian momentarily stunned, but he recovered quickly. Together with BG at his side, he turned and knelt respectfully toward the sound. Your Highness, you're awake? By the lake, space shivered, and a breathtaking young lady stepped slowly out of the spatial distortion. Her skin was fair and translucent, silver hair falling like snow to her waist, and her amethyst eyes were deep and otherworldly, free of any impurity. Tall and lithe, she carried an aura of elemental clarity and cool reserve as she approached the three-eyed golden lion. Elder sister. The three-eyed golden lion's panic eased at her arrival, and it nuzzled her affectionately. The young lady said nothing. She only raised a hand and gently stroked its head. Her touch was soft, but her gaze remained composed. Your Highness, the auspicious beast's luck was stripped by the plane's will, and you have awakened. What exactly is this? Dishin kept his head bowed, his voice respectful and full of questions. The petting paused for a heartbeat. A ripple of feeling flashed through her eyes. She lifted her gaze and seemed to peer through the distance toward the Sun-Moon Empire, as if seeing across endless space. A year ago, there was already a large-scale upheaval in the distribution of luck. I awakened back then. Her tone was calm and clear. At that time, the The plane's will was mainly redistributing luck among humans, so I paid it little mind. But now the plane's will's redistribution is far broader, so broad that it's encroaching on the luck due to our spirit beast race. I cannot stand by. The great golden cat hesitated, then spoke. The stripping of my luck has stopped for now. But what's left on me is only about half of what it was, and the vertical eye on its forehead flickered oddly, and it instinctively turned its gaze the same way the silver-haired young lady had. I vaguely feel that the missing luck has gathered in roughly that direction. Guyuena fell silent, realization dawning. The plane's will had made a desperate gamble. It was stripping luck from the original children of luck among humans and spirit beasts to concentrate on cultivating a new, more promising child of luck. But was such a move necessary? Luck was not something you could split and pour back. Each division weakened the plane's will in some way. If that weakness were exploited, it could become catastrophic. Unless, she thought without alarm, this newly born child of luck possessed an aptitude so exceptional that the plane's will was willing to risk everything to cultivate him, treating him with near-fawning favor. She did not say more, but curiosity rose in her chest. She looked down at the three-eyed golden lion rubbing against her palm. A small ripple appeared in her purple eyes and was quickly smoothed away. After a moment, she spoke without preamble. Dishian, if I am not here, you will govern the Star-Do Great Forest. Dishian looked up in astonishment. Your Highness? You? Guyuena only glanced at him coolly, then returned her gaze to the distant sky. Not now. It was just a thought that occurred to me. The light in her eyes flickered. The notion that something could make the plane's will throw everything into play fascinated her. Curious indeed. While the Dragon King young miss hesitated over whether to contact this newly born child of luck, the person at the center of the disturbance was elsewhere, counting his spoils. Sun Moon Empire, Mingdu Hall of Worship, Secret Chamber. During this time, Ming'an has been in Elder Iliex's care. Kong Ming'an, you flatter me. If not for Ming'an, I'd likely be dead by now. Elder Iliex, don't be modest. If not for you this time, Ming'an and I would have been in grave danger. It's not modesty, it's what any of us would do. Kong Ming'an stood to the side, watching his two superiors exchange humble thanks with a faint helplessness. He shook his head with a slight smile and didn't interrupt. He had already finished tallying the gains from the assassination. First and foremost, 2 divine beasts. Though Deming and Erming's power had been apparent, their status as divine beasts was unquestionable. Their blood, bones, muscles, even soul structures were priceless research material, far beyond ordinary 100,000-year spirit beasts. They might even contain divine-level mysteries, invaluable for his body cultivation and spell systems. Crucially, these resources were renewable, far more useful than any soft-bones rabbit breeding base. Even more important was a hidden prize, the protection and attention of the god of destruction. That promise carried more weight than any assurance from a certain pure, unblemished god king. For Kong Ming'an, the direct threat from that god king had been greatly mitigated. Under the god of destruction's watchful eye, that god king wouldn't dare make a move again. That bought Kong Ming'an precious time for unfettered expansion. With his greatest threat sidelined, he could be a little bolder. Perhaps nudge the Clear Sky sect now that it lacked its Great Sect Master and Second Sect Master. A small move, he told himself. Grudges had to be settled. Plans involving Shrek could also become more aggressive. He was fascinated by Tang San's mother, or rather, by that ancient golden tree. As he mused, Kong Ming'an looked up at his elder, who was still conversing with Iliex. Grandpa, for the next All-Continent Advanced Spirit Master Academy Soul Dueling Competition, can I be one of the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy's participants? Kong Deming paused, surprised. Why the sudden urge to compete? You were just through an assassination, and now you want to enter. I don't quite understand your thinking. He couldn't imagine such a motive. Isn't it said the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy has been runner-up for 10,000 years? I want to try to shake that title off. Clear my head a bit. Clear his head? Kong Deming regarded his grandson, wondering if his motive could really be so simple. After a beat, he nodded. All right, I'll arrange it. But as for who will be assigned to protect you, just have Elder Ye follow me. If even Elder Ye can't stop them, I'll call in reinforcements. No, I mean, call in a divinity. Kong Ming'an displayed the mark of the god of destruction's trial on his palm and spoke with an astonishingly casual air. Kong Deming sighed helplessly but didn't argue further. He didn't hear the rest of his grandson's conversation with that divinity, but he did catch the final line, the divinity's parting words. If you don't become a divinity within 30 years, then honestly, come back and inherit the god position. Chapter 38. Sooner or later, he will be eaten up. After chatting a while longer, Eliix and Kong Deming both chose to withdraw and cultivate. As the saying goes, practice is the only true test. In the fight they'd just witnessed, after both of the super veterans had really let loose, they'd each gained a lot. Secluding themselves to refine their understanding of the spell cultivator and body cultivator systems was clearly necessary. When the two elders left, Kong Ming'an's calm eyes turned to Deming and Ming, who sat nearby in a state of silent confinement. After a moment's thought, he raised his hand and opened the demiplane's door. With a thought, several advanced undead beings, each radiating a deathly aura, slowly emerged. Their eyes burned with pale blue undead flame and fixed on him, waiting silently for orders. Kong Ming'an waved a hand, and 10 containers, each as tall as a person and able to hold at least 500 liters, lined up before the undead. He stroked his brow, took out the blade of life, and tossed it into the hand of one of them. Go drain them and fill these. The blade of life was for breaking defenses and drawing blood. The containers were to hold it. With the regenerative power of the divine beasts, filling them wouldn't be difficult. And if their recovery wasn't enough, the blade of life could restore their vitality so they could be bled more. Honestly, it looked like supplies from advanced spirit beasts would never be in short supply. The undead nodded at the simple command and set to work, though their movements were still a bit stiff. Kong Ming'an smiled wryly. Using undead as assistants was never as smooth as one would like. They weren't afraid of hardship, but they lacked true intelligence, great in battle but inadequate for scientific research. I still need a few more assistants, he murmured. Miss Meng could do the work, but it would be better to have others help. He filed the task away and returned to secluded cultivation and study. Watching a top-level battle had been tremendously useful. Days passed in quiet comprehension. When Kong Ming'an finally emerged from the lab, several days had gone by. He teleported back to his room out of habit and went straight to the bathroom for a shower. A little later, toweling his wet hair and wearing a bathrobe, he stepped out, then froze. On the lounge chair nearby sat Miss Meng, resting lazily in the soft cushion. She wore a figure-hugging dress with a hem that stopped at mid-thigh. Conspicuous leg bands emphasized the line of her legs. Her chest rose and fell with each breath, well-developed if not spectacular. Her face, which not long ago had still held a hint of baby fat, had lost its childishness. The softer, brighter lines gave her an indescribable charm. She lay with one leg crossed, the tip of one foot hooked through a shoe, the other foot swinging slowly, completely relaxed. His gaze lingered longer than he meant to. Miss Meng turned her head without warning, caught him looking, and a knowing smile curved her lips, as if to say, "I knew it." "Do I look good?" she asked. Kong Ming'an tore his eyes away, continued to dry his hair, and approached slowly, as calm as if commenting on the weather. "Average." "Tsk." Miss Meng's eyebrows shot up. The leg stopped swinging. She put her toes down and stood up, stepping closer. "Just average?" "A bit above average," he hedged. She narrowed her eyes, tone entirely teasing. "Want to feel it? The texture is guaranteed to be good." "No need." He sounded uninterested. "Should I put on some white ones? I brought black ones in my bag, and lace and fishnets. Want to try them on one by one?" Her smile brightened, but there was a predatory glint to it. He found it hard to keep his composure. "You even carry these when you go out." "Isn't it for you?" she answered smugly, eyes flashing like a sly fox, certain he would give in. "Am I that perverse?" "You will be, sooner or later," the young miss snorted lightly, smile widening. Around other people, she restrained herself. Alone with him, she had no patience for pretense. Even with the sudden arrival of a certain Your Highness complicating things, she still felt the pressure of limited opportunity. Her ice blue eyes flicked to the bathrobe he wore. The thought that he might have nothing underneath rose unbidden. A quick flick to her forehead interrupted that train of thought. She clutched her head, pouted, and instantly misted her eyes for effect. "Why did you hit me?" "What do you think?" Kong Ming'an said, a little helpless. He didn't know where Miss Meng had learned to think such things. Her head was full of strange notions. She snorted, not denying it. Ming'an had always been stubborn, resistant to yielding, but she was used to it. Once she was older and bigger, he wouldn't get away. Sitting beside him, Miss Meng dropped the teasing and began to fill him in on what had happened while he'd been gone. Most importantly, the battle in the Mingdu suburbs a few days ago. As an ultimate-level clash, it had drawn a lot of attention, but nobody released details about who had fought. All anyone knew was that 4 people had been involved. Everything else was unknown. "I wanted to go see it with that certain somebody, but Mr. Kong has been stuck in the lab and wouldn't come out. Hard to even see him, sigh." Her voice was all sweetness and a little sourness. Kong Ming'an raised an eyebrow but went to the wardrobe to pull out clean clothes. He'd heard the complaint clearly, her resentment wrapped in humor, but their tacit understanding of years made it unnecessary to press. "My fault." He turned his back to her, voice flat. "Come with me to Shrek City later." Meng Hongchen's teasing died in her throat. Her eyebrow lifted, and a smile stole across her face like a kitten that had just nabbed a fish. "Young Master Kong actually invited me out." "Are you coming or not?" he asked, turning back with his clothes. "Yes, of course." Meng Hongchen answered immediately. Chances to be alone were rare now that a certain Your Highness was around. She wasn't about to miss this one. "Then go out first. I'm changing." She blinked, then unconsciously drew a little closer. "Can I watch?" "What do you think?" he said exasperatedly. "Tsk, all right, all right." She feigned disappointment with a pout, though she wasn't really upset. As always, she thought smugly, she'd eat him up sooner or later. Chapter 39, 100,000-year soul beast embryo. The plane's will is at work again. The gray door to the demiplane in Shrek City's Mingmen commerce silently opened. Kong Ming'an, dressed in white casual clothes, stepped out, followed by Meng Hongchen. Juzi, busy at her desk, looked up, her chestnut hair falling over her shoulder. Seeing them, her eyes flickered for a moment before she put on a gentle, professional smile. She rose and inclined her head in a respectful bow. Her fitted uniform shifted with the motion, briefly outlining the curve of her chest. "President, you're back," she said softly. Juzi then bowed slightly again, this time toward Meng Hongchen. "Miss Meng, long time no see." "Long time, Sister Juzi." Meng Hongchen's gaze took in Juzi's movements. Her inks told her Juzi's behavior had not been accidental. Narrowing her eyes, she shifted her stance, casually showing that her hand was intertwined with someone else's, and in a familiar tone asked, "Is Sister Juzi still busy?" "It's my duty, part of the job," Juzi replied, voice as mild as ever. She reached for a folder beside her out of habit, then looked at Kong Ming'an. "President, would you like an update on the commerce's recent status?" "No need. I just came out for a stroll with Meng." Kong Ming'an's voice was calm, but he noticed a tired look in Juzi's eyes. "Have you been very busy lately?" Juzi hesitated a moment before explaining. Heaven Do City will be hosting the next Advanced Spirit Master Academy Douluo tournament. The Heaven Do Imperial family has offered goodwill to the commerce and transferred some of the tournament-related business to us. Because it involves the Imperial family, there's a lot that needed reviewing during the transfer, so it took longer than usual. "I see," Kong Ming'an understood. He reached into his storage ring and produced a small bottle of emerald green liquid that shimmered with life energy, setting it on the table. "Life essence will relieve physical fatigue, but for mental exhaustion, I still recommend you rest." Juzi stared at the little bottle for a long moment, then managed, with something like difficulty in her voice, "Thank you, President." "Consider it an employee benefit," Kong Ming'an said with a smile. "Meng and I will head out now. Take your time, Sister Juzi." "Yes, President." Juzi returned her usual mild smile as the two left. As the door closed, though, her eyes lingered on the vial on the desk. She pressed her lips together. A shadow crossed her face as she fell into thought. "You're very generous with your employees, handing out bottles like that?" Meng Hongchen's voice carried a playful note of jealousy. Kong Ming'an glanced at her with mild surprise, then shook his head. I don't want to exploit my staff. Tsk. Miss Meng made a soft sound and smiled inwardly. She believed that, for now, this person's concern for an employee was genuine. Still, first he promised her revenge and granted her power, then he had given her value and helped establish a new spiritual anchor. If she were in someone else's shoes, she might start imagining more. And the man in question was rather handsome. If this continued, her future rivals might be plentiful. Miss Meng was briefly dismayed at her own jealousy. They merged into the bustle of Shrek City. Meng Hongchen set aside her worries and relaxed. Today was an outing. She paused at a stall selling trinkets, stopped for a street spirit master's performance, and let herself enjoy the city, the most prosperous and culturally rich place in Douluo. Kong Ming'an walked beside her, glancing around with a calm, observant mien. At one point, his gaze drifted to the tea house across the street. A pair of clear, weary eyes looked back from a private room window. Zhang Lexuan. She held a cup of clear tea, quietly watching the restaurant opposite as if waiting for something. Their eyes met. Kong Ming'an paused and gave a polite nod and a faint smile in greeting before turning away to walk on with Meng Hongchen, who was pointing at a nearby sugar painting stall. Zhang Lexuan's hand holding the teacup paused. She had seen that handsome young man once before at the commerce's entrance. Back then, he'd been with a purple-haired young miss. Now he was with a silver-haired one. Did he change companions so quickly? She frowned, then dismissed the thought. Shrek City was noticeable, but not so large. It was easy for prominent figures to stand out. It was probably just coincidence. She drained the slightly cooled tea and returned her attention to the restaurant below. She had come because she'd discovered someone in Shrek's outer court logistics was reselling Academy resources, and she was waiting for that person to show. Rubbing her temples, she fought to stay awake. There was so much hidden filth in Shrek, and she didn't yet understand why. But she would clean it up, she was sure of that. She exhaled a slow breath, gathering her turbulent chi. Some things are rotten to the core. They won't be easy to fix, she muttered. Kong Ming'an watched her for a moment, feeling a small pity for his nominal clan sister. Trying to save a great tree whose roots were already rotten was dangerous. If one wasn't careful, falling branches could crush the would-be rescuer. When that happened, people would blame the rescuer for insisting on saving a thing beyond saving. The despair would be overwhelming. He shook off the thought. Today was for an outing with Meng. Everything else could wait. Their walk ended on a pleasant, if understated, note. Back at Mingmeng Commerce headquarters, the two prepared to return to Mingdu via the demiplane when Juzi pushed the door open with an unusual urgency. She bowed to Kong Ming'an, nodded to Meng Hongchen, and then hurried to speak. President, she said, breathless. A subordinate reports we found something from the list you asked us to search for. Something from the list? Kong Ming'an raised an eyebrow. He had indeed given Juzi a list containing artifacts and treasures mentioned in the original work. The Ice Jade Scorpion's left arm bone, the myriad-year profound ice marrow of the Earth Dragon sect, and other rare items. But Juzi's expression made him worry this find might not be ordinary. Yes. Juzi took a steadying breath, her voice soft, but each word clear. Our branch in Starluo City acquired a 100,000-year spirit beast embryo. Kong Ming'an's hand, poised above the teacup, froze in midair. 100,000-year spirit beast embryo? Chapter 40. So beautiful, it makes one want to dissect it. Inside the highest-level isolation laboratory of the undead demiplane, 3 figures stood fixedly before a rhomboid crystal suspended over the central platform. Within the crystal, a faintly shifting stream of chi had been sealed, an impossibly pure white that darted left and right against the facets as if trying to break free. When it collided with itself, there was a palpable sense of immense vitality and a biting cold. This was the 100,000-year spirit beast embryo, more precisely, the Snow Empress embryo. 2 super-old figures stood behind him. Kong Ming'an remained outside the protective shield, his gaze calm as it fell on the Snow Empress embryo, but an odd absurdity tugged at him. In the original timeline, this embryo should have been bought by Xiao Hongchen at an auction in Starluo City 5 years from now. Later, when the body sect invaded Mingde Hall, the Snow Empress would self-destruct, leaving a trace of her origin in Huoyuhao's mental force C. Kong Ming'an had listed the embryo as a material he couldn't miss. He had expected to acquire it years hence, so how was it here already? Butterfly effect? The plane wheel's interference? He felt a little unnerved, but looked at the embryo and reached out anyway. Threads of mental force extended from his mind and struck several key nodes of the god-sealing platform. The pure white light inside the crystal convulsed violently. An overwhelming chill of extreme ice burst forth and shattered the platform's seals. Brilliant ice-blue radiance filled the laboratory. When the light subsided, the embryo was gone. In its place hovered a young woman in an ice-blue gown. Tall and graceful, the contours of the dress hugged a slim, elegant waist. Her hair was snow-white and fell to her waist, the tips moving with no wind, framing a face of cool, indifferent beauty. She was the head of the three kings of the land of extreme north, the Ice Sky Snow Maiden, the Snow Empress. Kong Ming'an stared, a faint blue gleam in his eyes, and found himself murmuring, "So beautiful." Not in lust, but in recognition. From his special perspective on energy, this was a perfection of structure. The Snow Empress had been formed by the pure ice-attributed heaven and earth elemental force at the core of the land of extreme north, a being naturally born and naturally nurtured. Every energy node and current in her body conformed to some heavenly pattern, a natural creation approaching origin-level harmony. That kind of beauty transcended mere aesthetics. It stirred him so deeply that for the first time, the intrusive thought of dissecting a humanoid creature flickered across his mind. He scolded himself inwardly for the loss of control. The Snow Empress slowly opened her ice-blue eyes, a flash of daze quickly turning to wariness as she sensed the human presence. Her icy spirit power coalesced reflexively. She meant to destroy everything around her. But before she could erupt, two unbearably powerful auras locked onto her. One exuded a deathly stillness and sanctity, the other pressed like scorching pure bloodline heat. Either would be lethal at peak strength, and she was not at her peak now. Locked by both, she felt as if her life were threatened. She forced down her instinct to attack. Her eye swept the scene and settled on Kong Ming'an. He looked the weakest, yet stood center stage. She felt the other two auras orbit him protectively. "Human, where is this place? Who are you?" Her voice was crystalline and sharp, like colliding shards of ice, carrying an inherent majesty and aloofness. Kong Ming'an reined in his analytical gaze and replied evenly, a gentle smile on his face. "This is my laboratory. My name is Kong Ming'an. Snow Empress, welcome to Awakening. The circumstances may not be what you expect, but I come with sincerity." Sincerity? The Snow Empress's eyes iced over. Her glance flicked to the two ancient figures behind him and back to Kong Ming'an. "Your so-called sincerity is imprisonment?" "Not imprisonment. I'm rescuing you." "Rescuing? Humph." Her eyes grew colder. To have been sealed by humans during transformation and forced into a lightless seal for an unknown time bred deep distrust. She did not believe easily. It was only the threat from the two ancient figures that restrained her. "I know what you've been through, and I know you can't trust humanity right now," Kong Ming'an said calmly. "But perhaps we can make a deal." "A deal?" She frowned, voice still frosty. "Humans are all bad." Kong Ming'an had expected hostility and made a mental note in his private ledger about the Snow Empress's temperament. He could be petty that way. He stayed composed and continued, "I can help you safely overcome your next 700,000-year heavenly tribulation, and I have a method for the Ice Empress's 390,000-year heavenly tribulation as well." The Snow Empress's ice-blue eyes betrayed the smallest ripple of emotion. Her usual impassivity shifted. "Do you know what you're saying?" Her tone thawed a degree, no longer absolute. "Of course." Kong Ming'an's smile deepened like a fish taking bait. He met her gaze and casually laid out his offer. "What I can give you is more than you might expect. Aside from your tribulations, I can also protect the entire land of extreme north from disastrous human encroachment. Even if you survive the tribulation, you alone might not be able to shield your homeland. So I offer my help." The Snow Empress frowned. It was one thing for this young human, supported by two terrifying powerhouses, to possess ways to deal with heavenly tribulations. It was another to claim the right to protect the entire land of extreme north. Just as she prepared to speak, he raised his hand. On his palm, a dark purple triangular mark appeared. Within it flashed a trace of divine force laden with destructive intent. This was a divine test?